I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with Dr. Maureen Hosier about her two groundbreaking books that she wrote with her sister, Berta Hosier Conger. They're called You'll Do Anything for Him and You'll Do Anything for Her. The two help redefine the language of relationships, urging readers to understand their true selves and why they are driven to sacrifice their own needs for the sake of their partner. Through their powerful insights, readers learn to rediscover their genuine selves, find out what they truly want, and ultimately achieve the love and happiness they deserve. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. The books are wonderful, and I love the fact that you have one for men and one for women, because sometimes the needs, sometimes the MOs are a lot different. So which one did you write first? You'll Do Anything for Him or You'll Do Anything for Her?
And we really wrote both of them at the same time because I'm a psychologist. I work with a lot of men who do the same thing, and the words are the same. They'll give up themselves to make the relationship work.
Yeah.
It's just who they've become in their early childhood relationships.
Trying to get mom or dad's approval, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely. Focus, attention, caring, respect, understanding. And when that doesn't happen, then children must figure out a way to survive in it. And we all figure out a way.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
just that it may not work for us later in life, but it's who we've become. It's unconscious. It's all unconscious in it because we're not thinking at that time. We're not able to think. We're just emotionally reactive.
Yeah. Is there a push and pull to a relationship where the more one pushes, the farther away the other one pulls away? If one's doing, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's like if one's doing all the heavy lifting, does that the balance of the relationship kind of changes, and it's, not one person should be doing everything to make it work, right?
It won't work because it means that the other person is focusing on themselves and what they want and need. So there isn't a relating going on.
Yeah.
There isn't an us. There is a me, and then someone is focusing on that me in order to make the relationship work, which means they have to give up themselves, their genuine, authentic, real, true self, in order to make the relationship work. And I can guarantee you those relationships do not last.
Yeah.
They may go for a while, but they do not last because someone is trying to make it work. Unconsciously trying to make it work. And that was their that's what they learned how to do in their relationships with their parents.
Right.
And I'm not a person that blames parents, because parents had parents too. Yeah. And we've come almost into a time now where we can begin to think about what's going on for ourselves and why things work and why things didn't. Before this, a lot was about survival. And we just had to make it work. In my lifetime, I've been really privileged to have a pretty pristine kind of external situation. Things are changing again now externally. But my parents, my mother was on a dairy farm as a child. she learned what she had to do to make things work for her family. My father worked to make things work for his family too.
Yeah.
So people were used to kind of a boss, and then people who obeyed the boss.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. I also think growing up in the eras that you and I did, that people had to make things work. I mean, divorce for most
exactly
people was not an option, you know?
right,
Yeah.
right.
I
And
mean,
they didn't know what was going on with everybody else in the world. They knew a little, but very little. We're so informed in all kinds of different ways now about what's happening outside ourselves. And so, and then we are emotionally reactive to that. As long as we humans are emotionally reactive, we're not solving problems. We're not making things work for all of us. We're only trying to make things work for ourselves, and then somebody who gives up themselves for that person to make it work for them. This whole thing has to work for all of us.
Yeah.
Or I think we're a done deal.
Mm.
We have to evolve like every other species. And I don't know that we're doing a good job.
Are all relationships work? I mean, some couples seem to seamlessly fit together, and other couples seem to be, you know, struggling all the time. Do you think even the ones that look like it's seamless have their issues and are just working at them better?
Well, if someone's giving up themselves, it works pretty well.
Hmm.
It's until they decide they don't want to do that, or the other loses interest and moves on, which we can do easily now. We can move on easily.
Mm-hmm.
Before, the families had to survive. So it was a united project in making things work. And there was an authoritarian person who was in charge. But everybody else gave up themselves to make it work. And so that's what children learn too. We haven't yet, as humans, begun to understand that we all were in this together. And when our focus is so short-sighted, me,
Mm.
we're going to have difficulties as humans on this planet.
Yeah.
We tend to fight about things and who wins and who loses. So we humans, unless we begin to understand relating and caring about one another and making it work for all of us, and how do we do that, which is a very complicated thing to do, I think we're in trouble. We're in trouble in our relationships, and we're in trouble as a species on our planet. With our planet.
Yeah.
We don't even care about our planet. We don't have a
Right.
relationship with our planet. So relationships are really the bedrock of everything.
Right. And relationships.
Everything that can succeed.
Yeah.
And we're not doing a good job of those. We're fighting about stuff.
Mm.
And so I focus on the relationship, and the first two books, they've been published.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And then this one, You'll Do Anything. That was him.
Yep.
You'll Do Anything for Her.
Yeah.
And they've been republished in 22 and 23. And I'm writing the third book. I'm not really wanting to say the title yet because it's going to be controversial, I think. Interesting, but controversial.
Mm.
But it's really how to make a relationship work. You know, that moment between two humans when we're on different pages?
Mm-hmm.
We really don't know how to solve that. We emotionally keep yelling at each other, trying to be heard. Both of us want to be heard. Well, both of us can't be heard in the same moment in time, but we humans just keep doing the same thing. We just keep yelling louder, stronger, and whoever has the most power generally wins, and the other listens. But we both have to be heard in order to become an us.
Yeah. Do you
And
think to become us, you have to lose a little bit of yourself?
no, none.
I know that's the antithesis of what you believe, but I'm just
Exactly.
throwing it out there as a
No, you're absolutely right. But see, a child believes that. We emotionally start at me, don't we?
Mhm.
We don't even know that anybody else out there exists. Our needs are met, mostly met. Then we begin to know what we want, know what we expect, and then demand what we want, what we expect. And mom and dad, or whoever, mom or dad and dad, or they and them, or whoever are the parents, have to build an us with their child.
Mm.
But as long as it remains that authoritarian, somebody gets their way and the others give up themselves, then that's what's passed on to the child.
Right.
So children have to experience being heard, understood, listened to, valued, appreciated, cherished, enjoyed, with reasonable boundaries that, kids will begin to listen to. They have to come to know that other people exist beside themselves. That's the process of the first 18 years, I think. But if we don't get that, and a lot of children have to give up themselves to survive in their households,
Mm.
then that's what they take out in the world.
Yeah.
And they're either going to be reactive to that, and they're going to be bullies, or they're going to go out in the world and give themselves up in order to make a relationship work. That's what they learned. And so we just sort of haven't figured out yet that emotionally we humans are mostly immature, young, still children. So a lot of adults walking out there are still children emotionally. So it makes sense what's happening. We
Do you
can't get
think
along.
do you think that more and more couples are breaking up? Do you feel the divorce rate is accelerating? Do you think it's, static at this point? Where do you think we are as like a society when it comes to marriage, divorce, and so forth?
I really don't know that. Um, I have to say that if you take a look at our actions in everyday life, we don't know how to get along.
Mm.
I try to stay with words that just explain what's going on. I don't have a positive or a negative kind of, somebody's right and somebody's wrong, because to me that it would be emotionally immature. We're all here. We obviously all need to get along, and that's not happening. We're fighting about things. We're arguing. We're demanding. We're children.
How do we become more emotionally mature?
Understanding that we are emotionally immature.
Yeah. Admitting you have a problem is always the first step to solving
Well,
the
yeah,
problem, right?
yeah. And for me, the relationship, the twosome is the bedrock of everything that goes on between people. If we can't figure out how to work in a relationship and care about two people, how in the heck can we extend that anywhere? We do it in our jobs because it's an authoritarian, it's a power structure. We know a power structure when we see it and what we have to do in order to be in it. Unless you're the boss.
Yeah.
But we all know what to do.
Yeah. Now, does your work as a psychologist involve couple counseling as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot.
Now, do you see from various couples, most of them suffering from the same afflictions?
Yes.
And what are those afflictions?
We're emotionally immature. We have to grow up emotionally. Which means that we have to understand we have to get along here.
Yeah.
And our solutions are always about it's not where we can all get together and think, okay, we've got this issue and we've got this issue. Somebody has to give up themselves. Somebody has to lose. And most of our political decisions are community decisions. What do we do there? It's complicated. How do we make it work, mostly work for everybody? And that's, for me, the relationship is the bedrock of that. If we can change that interaction, my sister and I called it the in it moment. You know what the in it moment is?
When you're actually involved in there and not removed somehow mentally or physically?
Well, when you're actually involved in, I want what I want, and you want what you want. How do we solve that?
Yeah.
It's that moment that's so critical, in my view, because if you get your way, then I have to give up myself. If I get my way, you have to give up yourself. That's not a relationship, in my book.
But sometimes couples are faced with that dilemma. My mother's sick. I need to move back to New York. You know, my sister needs help with her children. I need to move back to California. Both have needs. Both are different needs. Both have forces pulling them in opposite directions. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, right?
No.
Okay. Explain, how does it not? How do you avoid that pitfall?
The pitfall is that is called caring. When we care about someone, it isn't that we are feeling like we have to give up ourselves. So I understand there are some situations that would absolutely feel that way, but most people aren't going to do it.
Right.
They're going to get their sister or somebody else to go do it.
Right.
But there are some situations, and in a relationship, where you have to go work in Europe. I am working here in a high school. I'm doing what I'm doing. We can continue to care about each other and maintain our relationship. Or we can decide, no, you go your way and I'll go my way. But whatever it is, it can work for us both to the best that it can. Not perfect.
Yeah.
Not either or, though. It's, you need to go, I need to stay. Emotionally, you need to go. Emotionally, I need to stay.
Hmm.
Can we make it work as a couple together? And we figure those things out? Or is it my preference or your preference to end the relationship because it doesn't work enough for you now? Those are huge emotional perspectives and decisions and preferences.
Right.
But we can do that and still care.
Yeah. Is ending a relationship a defeat? I mean, sometimes relationships had their value, had their worth, were sustainable for a period of time. But then after that, because of any number of factors, it's time to go. It's time to say goodbye.
There's a great book. It's called A Conscious Person's Guide to Relationships by Ken Keyes, Keyes. It was written in 1979. This guy, two memorable things that I learned is, number one, when we keep trying to make our partner change what they are doing because of what I want, number one, that's an emotionally young place.
Right.
That's what kids do. They try to make the other change. That he calls an addiction. Trying to make the other change their perspective. Give up themselves and be for me. Now, some people resort to violence to do that.
Right.
And the other thing he said in his book is about preferences. There are times when our preferences can be similar or close enough that it makes the relationship works well enough for us because of our preferences together. But we may have a preference that it can't work anymore for the other. And then that would just mean we both agree to that and we move on.
Yeah.
But there's no fighting.
Right. That's where the emotional maturity takes place, because that's where usually fighting takes place. And if children are involved, which will keep the couple together on some level always, the fighting is now impacting their lives also.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the fighting and the arguing. And that's what my next book is about. And that it is about the in it moment, the fighting moment, the arguing, the fighting, the screaming, the demanding, the commanding,
Mhm.
the, getting up and leaving, the emotional reaction, the shutting down. That moment is the critical moment between two people.
Yeah.
If we could figure that out for two people, I think we could figure it out for larger groups of people.
Yeah.
But for two people, I think that the way to understand it is we have to recognize the moment that we're in it.
Yeah.
And if we're in it and we recognize it, we know it's not going to work. So let's not do this. This isn't working for us. Let's stop.
Yeah. It's hard because you're only in charge of one half of the couple. You
That's
might
right.
be emotionally mature, but your partner might not be. So
No.
you don't think that's true?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
We humans, as like every other species here, must evolve.
Right.
We get together with people unconsciously.
Mhm.
They are unconsciously familiar to us.
True.
we have many opportunities with them to recognize that moment. When it's not working for the two of us, let's stop. Because in that moment, this is the very thing that you and I got together about. We didn't know it. Because I had work to do with how you handle things, and you have work to do with how I handle things.
Right.
And so if we can get that consciously up here, this is an opportunity. This in it moment is an opportunity. So I have learned how to recognize when I'm anxious, and I can stop my anxiety. Now, not for good, not forever. Believe me, it comes back. But then I stop it again. And I get myself back into the moment, and I'm just going to deal with what happens, not what I think is going to happen. Because what I think is going to happen may or may not happen. I don't want to do that. That's a waste of my time. I only want to deal with what happens. And you and I humans deal with all kinds of things that they never thought would happen.
Yeah.
And we dealt with them.
Yeah.
We had to. So
Absolutely.
I can get myself out of anxiety. And some anxiety is greater than others. I totally get it. There's some issues that are really, really big, and it's really hard. But it's interesting when you let go of anxiety to find out what happens going forward. Because we didn't think of that. Things change outside of us as we go forward. And then we deal with it when we need to deal with it. So you and I are together for a reason. And believe me, it's not about love. We think it is. Humans made that up. But it's about our emotional growth potential to solving things for the two of us. Because if we could solve things here for the two of us, we can go out and solve things then hopefully for more of us. And we're not doing a really good job of it yet.
Yeah. And clearly from the state of the world and the state of America today, for sure, lots of division. Do you feel that all relationships have similarities, whether it's a relationship with your boss, a relationship with your wife, a relationship with your child, a relationship with your mother, that all of these relationships kind of have the same principles?
Yeah, I do. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I do, because I see it from the principle of emotional growth for me. And that is, are we growing? I can remember being 38 years old and really not knowing what it meant to grow. Everybody's talking about it. I'm thinking, something's wrong with me. I don't even know what it means.
Right.
And then when I understood that growing means I understand something about me, that I've gotten, that I now can be a different person going forward in that place. I now know something new that I hadn't experienced before, hadn't thought about. How could I think about it if I hadn't experienced it? I couldn't even think about it. So I've had the experience of growing emotionally. So it's a big deal for me to not want to understand why you're doing what you're doing in the argument, The important part is for me. What am I doing in the argument? What's going on for me that I've reverted back to my childhood arguing and, with my mother, and what's going on for me? Because it's in that moment I can go into myself then and begin to understand myself better. That's where I grow. Does that
Very,
make
very
sense?
interesting. Yep, I completely understand. Relationships and communication. Is the relationship essentially communication? Without communication, there is no relationship?
That's really an important question, because I used to think people would come in and they say, well, we're not communicating really well. And I said, well, that's not the problem. The problem is communication.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what's underneath the communication is they don't know how to communicate.
Right.
Neither one of them have had the experience with parents, is where we need to be able to communicate us. And if our parents didn't want to receive us and just wanted things done the way they wanted, then there was no communication.
Mm.
Communication is your child comes to you and you want to understand what's going on for them in the situation, what they're feeling, how they're seeing it, and not ream them for, handling it wrong.
Right.
But okay, let's think about that. What do you think is going on for, she used to be your best friend,
Mm.
and you begin to help your child think about themselves, think about the situation, and what would be the best thing to help them take care of themselves without blame or demands or criticism or disgust, without those emotional reactions. It's being helpful and caring.
So children are kind of put on a path for having good or bad relationships at a very young age. If you believe, and I do too, that the relationship between the parent and child will be mirrored in the relationship
Yes.
between the child or the adult child and partner.
Yes.
Yeah.
And exactly, the adult child. I think we have a lot of adult children acting out, looking for the power that they didn't have as children.
Yeah. It's a rocky road to navigate for a lot of couples, that's for sure. Few people have the ideal upbringing. Most parents do the best they can, and they fall short here and there.
Well, they've done what's been done to them.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, it all makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel that people whose parents were divorced are more likely to have problems forging relationships?
I don't even think about it that way, because that's an outside experience. Of course, it will be more how it's handled by the parents with the child, and how the relationship with the child was handled when the kid was a child. I mean, there's my sister, a great story. Her 6-year-old or her 7-year-old daughter, she went to slap her daughter, and she hit her because the kid was mouthing off or whatever the kid was doing. You know what kids do. And my sister had the important realization, and this is where she grew and then began to grow more. She realized as her hand was going through the air to smack her child, that it was my mother's hand.
Yeah.
Her mother's hand.
Yeah.
And she promised her daughter, I will never do that again. I will never handle an interaction between us like that again. I want to know what's going on for you. I will listen. I will help you with the situation that you have. My sister really wanted her to be able to be so honest with her, so her daughter wouldn't fear being honest with her.
Hmm.
And that they could figure out the situation together, the two of them. But if her daughter were afraid, guess what? That kid begins to shut down in that moment for the rest of the time they spend together. And then they don't even have a real relationship.
Absolutely.
So that was the moment that it turned my sister around. I've had moments where I've turned myself around and thought, duh, you know, I needed to learn that. That was me. That was my bad.
Right.
I don't want to handle things that way. I want to handle things in a caring, understanding, appreciative, valuing, cherishing way.
Yeah.
Helpful way.
What would you say are the top characteristics or attributes of a successful, loving relationship where each person involved in that relationship maintains a great sense of self?
Bingo. And values their partner's sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
And then they work things out so they can imagine ways to have it work for both of them. They are valuing each other, listening, wondering, imagining how to make it work for both of us in that same moment in time. So they are, every time that happens, you build a closer us.
Yeah.
And that us is exquisite.
Yeah.
Is really letting the other person be who they are and not demanding they be who I want them to be. But we have to, but if that's what's happened to us as children, we have to undo that.
We have to reprogram ourselves, that's for sure.
Yes.
The name of the books are You'll Do
You'll
Anything for Him and You'll
Yep.
Do Anything for Her. They're written by
Right.
Dr. Maureen Hosier and her sister, Berta Hosier Conger. They are wonderful, insightful books that have taken their years of cumulative experience, put them down on paper, and they will be a great reflection guide for you on your life, on your relationship, and on the life you want to build with yourself and with your partner. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
I really appreciate being with you and your being you. Thank you. You're great.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation very, very much. It was very insightful. Yep, absolutely. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time. This time, until next time, on Spotlight.